Hi, this is Chris from the Project Management Guide. This video is called Why Small Projects Are Challenging to Run and What to Do About It. So in this video we're going to look at small projects, and there's a bit of a misconception that because they're small they're easier to run, and there's lots of different definitions of what small actually is anyway. So I'm going to talk about some of the challenges of running these sort of projects, and also in a moment I'm going to talk about some of the typical examples, and I'm sure you recognise a lot of these examples of what a small project is, and I'll discuss some of the ways to overcome some of the challenges of running these types of projects. So what are small projects then? And the answer is that most projects actually are small projects, and it really does depend on your organisation about what they define as a small project. And this is what I want to talk about really, is some of the challenges around how we run these sort of projects that are given a small label. Some of those small project constraints that we have to deal with as project managers, and we have to navigate all sorts of different projects. And it's really important or useful to understand or recognise the sort of projects that we're operating in. And sometimes the worst thing is that people give them a small project label, and that's just based on some idea or some notion. And the idea, what the project manager needs to do is get to the real facts of whether the project is actually a small project or how they're going to manage the project. So why is a project small then? And it's all to do with the constraints that we're operating within, and that's the same for any project actually. So we have all of our normal constraints in terms of the scope that we've got to deliver, the features and all the deliverables that we've got to deliver. We've got a time element to the project as well. So small projects, the project might need to be delivered quite soon. And then, of course, we've got constraints around resources. So we might have a small budget, we might have part-time availability of a project manager, we might have part-time availability of a delivery team, etc., etc. So it's all about the normal project constraints that we have on a project around scope, time, and budget and resources, basically. So I'm going to run through some quite common scenarios for what are defined as, or quite often given the label, small projects. And as project managers, we have to navigate and work out what we're going to do and how we're going to manage these projects. And quite often we're given these projects by people and they just give it a small label, basically. So I'm going to give a load of examples now, which mean that if you recognise this sort of project, then I've got a few ideas on how you might want to manage those sort of projects. So let's get going with the examples. So the first example I've got is what I call the unloved essential project, and this is a sort of project that the project sponsor, they really want to do this project, but unfortunately nobody else does. So there's a real disconnect basically between the project sponsor and the project team, and effectively there's a disagreement in the priority. So the sponsor really wants this project, but the project team just can't really see the reason why they're doing the project in the first place. And so what happens is that the project team they just don't want to do the project. So there's an apathy, there's a lack of focus, there's delay, you sometimes get a bit of moaning, and they basically put it down the priority stack. And this is really challenging to manage this as a project manager. So, as a project manager, you've obviously got to negotiate between the project team and the sponsor, basically. So you've got to sort of get everybody together, and you've basically got to do a process of negotiation and mediation between the two parties. And you've also got to look at whether projects should actually be stopped or not, or certainly could you reduce the scope. And you've basically got to find a good outcome for the project delivery of between some sort of middle point between what the project sponsor wants and what the project team wants. And you've got to push this. Also, it's important to push these sort of projects to really get them done and get them out of the way, specifically if they are actually really small projects in the first place. The next one I've got is what I call the post-launch phase project. And these are typically sort of mopping up phases or mopping up projects, or they're the sort of final phases of projects or much bigger projects that have run that have been run, and then this is just sort of the finishing off bit, or it might be decommissioning of a set of systems or something like that. And this is really common, actually. I've been handed many of these over the years, and it's very typical that you'll give these sort of projects to more junior project managers to sort of cut their teeth. I mean, these are still essential projects to get done, but the sort of priority is sort of move. Basically, what quite often has happened is that a more senior project manager might have been running the project for a long time, and might have been running it for a year or 18 months or something like that, and they sort of lost interest because they've sort of done the main project. There's still a little bit of project work to do, so they hand it over to a more junior or a more junior project manager to pick up. And so what is it? This is obviously still essential work. It's still an essential piece of project work to get done. So what you really need to do, if you're handed one of these as a project manager, is you need to go back to basics. You still need to go through all of the normal project management processes. You need to do an assessment of the project. You need to do your normal planning. You need to scope it out properly, and you need to do a full planning process as well. Essentially, what I'm saying is you do actually still need to do the project properly. So you need to sort of go back to basics and find out where you are on the project, and then run it as you would any other project. So here's another one. This one is called the small, nearly finished project. Oh yes, I've been handed a few of these in my time. So this is the project that somebody says to you, oh well, we've done most of the project, and we're going to launch this in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. It's all sorted. And you go, oh, great. And for the first of all, I've done this a few times myself, where you come in and you go, oh, great, this project's nearly finished. It should be pretty easy to get over the line. And then as you get into it, you think, hang on a minute, this isn't really as I thought it was. And you really basically, as the project manager, you need to make your own assessment as to whether the project is finished or not. So you need to, as for all the other examples in this video, you've got to run the project properly. You've got to take an assessment of where the project actually is, and you've got to do a project audit basically, and you've got to follow your normal project management process. You've got to talk to sponsors and stakeholders and define or clarify what the objectives and the scope are. Document it as well, really important. And then you've just got to basically work out where you are in the project, and then you've got to get going and put it through a sort of simple process. As I said, I've had these many times, and sometimes they are nearly finished. Quite often they're not. So anyway, bit of a word of warning on this one. Follow your normal processes and make your own assessments on whether the project's nearly finished or not. And then finally, we've got the important but low priority project. Yes, I love these ones. These are really good projects to manage. So somebody says that they're really important. They might even be essential. They might even be something like that needs that might be the company's got to do it for compliance or whatever. So this is sort of a variation of the unloved but essential type project that we talk about. And these are actually really hard projects to manage because they keep getting deprioritized. So I think the main challenge that you want on these sort of projects, you actually need to set some sort of deadline. And if you haven't got a deadline to get these projects over the line with, then you've really got a problem, because they keep getting deprioritized. So they might be really important for the company, but the project team said, well, typically they might have said, well, we've done most of the project. We know it's really important, but we've got something that's higher priority. So you just basically keeps getting bumped down the queue, the project queue all the time. So these are quite hard to manage. So basically, one of the main things is you've got to question whether it is actually really needed or not. So basically, you've got to try and attempt to kill the project if you can. Basically, you've got to question whether you really need to do it. If you can't, if it absolutely has to be done, then you've got to get everybody together. Again, it's a negotiation, a mediation process. You've got to look at whether you can reduce the scope on this potentially. And then you've just basically got to put in all your normal project management processes to sort of get the project going and manage it in your normal process. So in summary then, so I think we've looked at lots of different examples. Small projects. Every project manager runs small projects. Lots of people that aren't project managers run small projects as well. So they're really common. In fact, they're the most common type of project that we run. But just because they're small doesn't mean to say that they shouldn't be managed properly. So you still need to implement all of your normal project management processes. You need to define the scope, talk about what the objectives are, sit down with the sponsors and the stakeholders and the delivery teams. You've still got to run your normal project management processes. That's the key to it. And you've got to ask questions. You've got to question why we're doing the projects. You've got to question if we can reduce scope, all of those sort of things. And you've also got to, it's useful, I think, with these examples to sort of try and understand them and recognise them for what they are, basically. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about a lot more. I've got a companion video that basically talks about how to sort of break them down and sort of get into a bit more detail on how we run. A few more ideas basically on how to tackle these sort of projects and what you can do about doing project audits and getting them off on a sound footing, even though when you're limited with project constraints, for example. So thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe and click on the bell. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear about how you're getting on managing your small projects and challenges, whether you've seen some of the examples that I've given or got any other examples that you want to add. And finally, if you want to find out more information, you can find us at theprojectmanagementguide.com. I'll see you in the next video.